And I hit that. And it says we are live on Facebook. So I guess that means we're live on Facebook, huh?
Okay,
How about
good.
that? Thank you so much for joining us. Novi Public Library's Women's History Month program. So excited about this. So we're recognizing roles of women past and present. If you have questions, if you have comments, you're free to share. For those of you who are joining us on Zoom, I'd ask you to type your comments or questions in the chat and I'll respond there. And if you're watching live on Facebook, type it in the comments section and I'll try to monitor both of them and address your questions or comments there as well. Well, it is my pleasure. When I think of women's history in Novi and in the Oakland County area, I immediately thought of Miss Kathy Crawford because you've done it all. You've done so much. I'm so glad to have you. You're a former member of the Michigan House of Representatives. You grew up in Novi. You're still in Novi. You've been
Yeah,
on the city council. You've been Oakland County Board of Commissioners, actively involved with Novi and the county's senior community. You are a member of the American Business Women's Association. You've been chair or our chair of the Novi Historical Commission. You don't do enough, Ms. Crawford.
yeah,
Slacking, huh? Welcome.
yeah. Well, you know what? I was brought up on a farm in Novi, 79 years ago. I grew up on a farm on Grand River, and my family always said, you don't complain about what other people are doing unless you're willing to get in there and do something yourself. And so I sort of grew up with that philosophy that, I just appreciate other people volunteering and doing things, but I'm not going to complain about what other people are. Well, I might a little bit. I might complain a little bit from time to time about what other people are doing, but I am going to jump in and try to help, I guess. Whether it was a church thing that was involved in, what usually happens if you do say something. Yeah, I don't care if you're a choir member or you say something about, well, I think we should do this, then usually that's the person that gets to do it, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if you've been
Yes.
in organizations, that's usually what happens. So, we were always a small town, so everybody had to jump in. Novi was really small. In fact, I kind of laughed that I was telling somebody yesterday that when people found out that I lived in Novi, they'd go, Novi, they didn't know where it was or anything like that. And they'd say, they literally would begin speaking slower to me because they thought I was just, a farmer. What would I possibly know? And it used to
Mm.
make me mad that they thought everybody in Novi was a farmer, even though we probably were. Of
But
us
don't
were.
say that, right?
Yeah, but it just sort of bugged me.
Hmm.
I couldn't wait to get a job and work downtown Detroit. That was my goal. So my goal was realized when I was still a teenager working downtown at the Detroit News. That was a highlight
Oh,
of my life. I thought, oh,
yeah.
I get to wear high heel shoes and walk down Washington Boulevard. And I really thought I was something.
How long ago
That
what did you do there?
Actually, I worked in the classified advertising department, and I was a proofreader for a while,
Hmm.
and also was in the classified display. Where you measure ads and you set up ads and do all that kind of stuff. Back when we used to have pages and pages of advertisements, classified advertisements. So there weren't many women in those departments then, and I was young. I was just happy to be working downtown.
I
That
was
was
going to
all.
say, how did you land something like that back
Yeah,
then?
I
Because,
knew somebody that had a part-time job down there, and she lived in Grosse Pointe, and she knew people in high places or whatever, and so she recommended me, and I got to do that. So
hmm.
my mother had to drive me to what was called then 5 Points, which is 7 Mile and Grand River, to get on a bus, to ride the bus to Washington Boulevard, and then get off and walk over to Lafayette, where the Detroit News was. So those were great days. I remember back fondly about those times.
I'm sure you can take it back, so women in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, definitely not playing the roles that they do today. Where
Uh,
were they? What was going on then?
well, one thing that have thought about, I mean, I was never a person that really pushed or wanted, oh, well, I'm a woman and I should get to do what the men do. It just wasn't done back then. I mean, even when I got a job selling display advertising for the Observer eccentric newspapers, I did the same thing the men did, but they called me an ad salesperson, and they called them account execs. And I was doing the same thing, right? But I didn't get mad. I was just happy to have that job. I was pretty pleased with myself just to be able to sell. And they gave me, of course, all the crummy accounts. They got the big new auto display ads and everything. So I never really sold a lot of the big fancy ads, but I was great with pet shops. I can tell you I could sell pets. I found that out through advertising. But, a lot of the women, once we got married, then it was sort of frowned on it back in the day in Novi anyway. You didn't, especially when children came along, you didn't work outside the home. You stayed home. That's what you were supposed to do. Feed the kids, take care of kids, take care of the house. And, you just sort of lived. Women back in the 60s and the 50s lived their life vicariously through a husband. You were a daughter first, and then you were a wife, and then you were a mother. And I, as the former director of the Novi Senior Center, I ran into so many women, older women, who really didn't even know who they were. They had lived their life through all these other people, and they never really found out. It was sad to me. They never really.
But at that time, were they satisfied at that time? And
yeah, yeah, because they didn't seem, they weren't going to push, and they weren't going to. It just wasn't done then. It wasn't done then. We just listened. We were more passive about things. If our parents told us something, we generally obeyed. There always were kids that, I reached a point in time where I didn't want to. My mother used to say, well, what will the neighbors think if you stay out till 12 o'clock at night? And I thought, well, the nearest neighbor is like 2 miles away. I don't think they're going to know how late I'm out. But, you didn't talk back, and you didn't, you sort of, the only events and activities generally were through the churches out here, because we were a small community. And it was like that, I think, for a lot of the suburbs of Detroit, Farmington, Northville, all of us out here in the suburbs they were quiet, little peaceful places, and now they're a lot of hubbubs. Now Northville and Farmington are suburbs of Novi. I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard a laugh in the background there.
Yeah. That's what I said. I really want to live long enough where Northville and Farmington become smaller than Novi. That was my goal for sure. I wanted to be able to, because we had to go, all girls and boys in Novi we didn't even have a school. We had to go, we had the old elementary school on Novi Road, but we had to go to school, other schools, and Novi paid our tuition to go there. So you were sort of like second-class citizens in a way. Everybody knew you didn't really belong there. So I went to Northville Elementary, so did my husband, Hugh. And then as school boundaries changed, I ended up going to Wixom and Walled Lake. I graduated from Farmington High School and actually never left Novi. So, I got to meet a lot of different people, but I never really felt a part of any of those schools or communities that I lived in. I still lived in Novi, still thought a lot about Novi, but things were so different for women, and we just didn't really. I saw things beginning to change in the 60s.
Okay. What was the turning point? What happened?
Well, what happened here for us anyway, and for me personally, was there was an organization that started, and maybe many of our listeners or viewers will remember the JCs, and there are still JCs and JSETs. The JSETs was the female portion. They were the auxiliary members, and you were married to a JC in order to be a JSET. And they had, it was a personal growth kind of organization. In fact, many of our mayors, like Mayor Quinn and Ed Leiniger was on city council, and he was in the JCs. My husband Hugh was in the JCs, and he's on city council. And many of the people that were active in the city of Novi, and some still are, had been members of that organization at some time. And the women's organization started having programs about getting to know your own abilities and running projects, nationwide projects, and learning how to do major things like that. And for women I mean, it was pretty amazing. I remember I had a meeting here at my house one time, and here at 11 Mile, and we had all the kids because we didn't have babysitters. You didn't have daycares to send your kids to back in the days in the 60s and 70s. There was no daycare, no such thing. So we had all of our kids and they were outside and we weren't paying attention. We were really involved in our meeting and we were talking about what we were going to do next. And we were going to be renting out car seats because back then moms didn't have car seats in their cars. And so our organization purchased car seats and rented them to local moms. And then they would turn them back in and we'd rent them out to somebody else for very low price just to keep the kids safe. But I got a phone call during the meeting and somebody in Pioneer Meadows, which is like a half a mile away, called and said, "Are you missing anything?" And I thought, no, we're having a meeting over here. And they said, "Well, we have 8 small children here holding hands down in the subdivision."
What?
We were engrossed in our business. We didn't even realize the kids were missing. And half a mile down the road, all holding hands and taking care of each other. So,
Wow.
so we started like a babysitting co-op so that, if somebody was going to be busy and involved in a meeting or a project or something, somebody would watch the kids for the day. And we had a lot of activities that were family related. So camping trips and all that kind of thing. But that was really the beginning of women finding out that there was a lot more that they could do besides be moms and a homemaker. And, they could still have time to do other things. And it was certainly a learning experience for me, for sure. And a lot of people. And I became president of the Novi JSETs and my husband became president. And then I went on to the district level, then eventually became vice president of the state in that organization. And you really learned a lot about organizing and doing that, it was all community service minded projects, lots of things.
What were the difficulties for women back then? Seems like it was going pretty well, maybe.
It was just that you weren't, you weren't
apart.
It definitely wasn't allowed. I mean, you couldn't, most of the women that I knew in the JSETs I didn't have a college education, but most of them did. They had a college education and they could have been, some of them did become teachers and they worked outside the home, but the rest of them went to college and they basically met their husband and then came back and, had a house and had kids and they never used their college education. They never did anything. Even when it became more acceptable for women to work outside the home, they just didn't do it. They never did. And so I think their life was diminished to a certain extent. I see this with older adults today. And the fact that I was the director of the senior center, I see the people that don't keep being involved and aren't still doing things, their world becomes smaller. And your life sort of diminishes, everything becomes smaller. So it's real important for everyone to stay connected and stay active in the community, I think. People don't realize the value of that. It's really
for sure
tremendous value.
How did men receive women when they started to evolve and do more and not just become the wife and the mom at home? Do you recall?
Well, I never asked mine. I never asked him. It sort of became obvious that if you wanted to have a better home or you wanted to have more things, it was getting to the point where you really did need to have a 2-person income in a family. So, and if your kids, it's just then the kids were getting more involved in sports and other things that cost money. So, you wanted your kids to have piano lessons and you wanted your kids to have dance lessons and not nearly the range of activities they have now. I mean, now it's unbelievable how many things parents get their kids involved in. But back then, it was just sort of dance lessons or piano lessons or something like that. And to get those things, you really needed to have more income. And so many of them worked part-time or started working part-time, and that would have been in the 70s. but we still did all of our volunteer projects and everything. I mean, the women here were really busy, and the men just kind of, they accepted the idea, I think, because there was more money coming in, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they found out the wives could do it, and they still were able to cook dinner, and still have dinner and get the dishes done and get the kids ready for school. And, I saw in my brother-in-law's a major shift where they actually were participating in doing housework. Now in today's world, the young guys, when they get married and everything, they do the same things that the women used to do.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, I remember going to a meeting one time. I came home and the kids, two of them were naked. And I said, well, what about the diapers? Where are the diapers? Well, I couldn't keep them on them. I didn't know how to, they wouldn't stay on. So, I mean, the moms, or the wife anyway, really was the keeper of the children. You kept them clean, you gave them the bath, and you did the vacuuming, and you did all of those things. And it wasn't really the men's fault. It's just, that's the way it was, just the way it was. I sort of envy these girls today, because they share the workload in a house, in a home.
They aren't having it.
Yes, they share the workload.
All the responsibility on the woman. No way.
Yeah,
Huh?
new to me. That's sort of new to me. But God bless them. I mean, that's great. But back when I was raising children and everything, it just wasn't done. We weren't mad about it. There wasn't anything to be said about it. It's just the way that it was. So I think, since this year marked the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote,
Yes.
I think, I think it's good to remember that we have come a long way. Maybe, the work isn't done yet, and it's not enough. Still, we don't have as many women in political offices and everything as we should have, because if we're going to represent the whole population. But
and let alone Black women, they didn't even have it. Hasn't even been that many years for them either.
In 2018, in the Michigan House, I mean, this was it was unparalleled time, because 53 women were elected to the Michigan House out of 110, and that was an amazing thing. I mean, I was there, 6 years ago, when there was like 5 of us in the Republican side. Yeah, so out of 62 or something. So it's there still aren't enough women in politics, but I think it changes. And I think because the culture has changed and there's so much I don't want to say drama, but there's bitterness with people that are politicians. People think it's evil or something, and that they don't realize that most people that run for office are just like them.
Sure.
They were just people that were active in the community and decided to run for office. But it's very hard. It's hard work to run for office today because of the bitterness and the way things are. You get hate mail, and you get threats, and you get, for silly things, just something, one vote out of 3,000 or 5,000 bills, one vote that you took that a person didn't like, and they're going to harass you for years. It just doesn't make sense, really.
It's something between then and now and how things are. And I guess women of today have the strength and endurance because of women in history that had to fight and struggle and sometimes close your mouth. And now women don't have to close their mouths anymore. They can speak up and, rally for causes. But it just sometimes turns ugly, and that needs to be, redirected. But
I guess women probably feel it more than men when running for office. And it's so hard, and it's so hard on you, because you're out there campaigning all the time, and the campaign trail is really a tough place to be. You're out there knocking on doors and everything, and some people don't like you just because of the way your hair is, or you wore slacks, or there's a lot more to pick on with women, I can tell you that. Men could wear the same suit 5 days in a row and just change a shirt. Women are really, I thought about that every day, is that the women are really scrutinized much more than the men are. You know, some of the women don't wear makeup. And so somebody doesn't like that. And some women wear too much makeup. And some women like me, older women, even have a harder time because I don't know where my eyebrows went, but something happened to my eyebrows. They've totally left me. And
Is that a sign of age? I just said
I
that
think
the other day about my own.
it
Like,
is.
what's happening to them?
Other older women, they have the same problem. And so you have to pencil them in. And if you don't pencil them in exactly the same, you look permanently surprised and people are, you know, somebody's going to pick on you for that. So there's a lot more to criticize women about than there is for men. And it's not fair in a way, but it makes me laugh because it's just the way it is, you know. I mean, I'm more accepting of things that, you know, I'm not gonna get mad about it. I mean, it's just the way it is, you know. Why get mad about it?
So
we have a lot of things to think about, you know. I mean, somebody's pants are too tight or somebody's shoes are, you know, too high, or I don't know. There's just lots of things that we have
Kathy,
to deal
you've always
with.
had a voice. You've always had a voice. You've always been strong. Well, I don't mean always, since I've known you, but how far back was this? Have you always been this way? Or women weren't always, you know, as vocal now? Do you know the turning point for you personally?
I think, well, as I think back, you know, I was always overweight. I was a heavy kid. And living on the farm, you know, and I think my family, my Irish family, and they were from the South. So they came up from the South, you know. I mean, my body was by biscuits and gravy for the most part. And, you know, and being on a farm, we never were out of food. So I always was overweight. And my family, I don't know if they thought it was a sign of prosperity or what, but they never criticized me for that. And so I felt okay about myself. But, you know, there was some, you know, once I got in school and everything, there was bullying, you know, if you weren't a perfect size. And because I was going to different schools, like Farmington, for example, I remember everybody in Farmington, to my point of view anyway, had a fur blend sweater, and I did not have a fur blend sweater. And I just didn't fit in. I felt so out of place there. And it seemed like every school I went to, I really did feel out of place, but I never lost my self-confidence because my family members really said, you know, it doesn't, you know, they were good, strong, faithful, you know, people, religious people, and believed in the simple life and everything. And they thought I was fine just the way I was. So, you know, I never really lost my confidence. And when I joined, my mother was a 4-H leader here in Novi, and we had a small, very active club. And I had animals that had to be shown. I had sheep, Henry and Henrietta, that I had to show. And when I started doing a showing at the fairs, and when I started being involved in the fairs, you know, where you make muffins and you might get a blue ribbon or whatever, I got a white ribbon for the sheep because they didn't do what they were supposed to do in the arena. But I started getting more and more confidence. And we also had, they had a program for people that could run games for, you know, when there were a lot of kids together, you could do games together. And usually they were more active games, outdoor games. And so I got to be a leader in that, in the 4-H. And that, you know, that helped my confidence too. I never was a person who was shy about talking, ever, ever. I mean, I always talked a lot, but I had a big family. In fact, it was sort of, our farm was kind of like a commune, you might say, because my deaf aunt and uncle lived with us because people didn't think deaf people should live by themselves. They thought they were retarded, which they were not. And Detroit had one of the few schools for the deaf. So my aunt and uncle lived with us, and they had 2 daughters that were hearing, they could hear, both of the daughters could, so they lived with us. And then my grandmother and grandfather, my dad's father and mother, lived with us. And my granddad had had a major stroke, but he did all the planting and everything. So, so there were a lot of us together on the farm. And I guess I just learned to talk a lot because there was always something going on. And there was always people to talk to, right? There's always somebody to boss around or be bossed by. on the farm, and animals too. I talk to the animals for sure.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
that was
Kathy, I want to join
quick and
in.
rough.
I want to join in organization, women's organization, AAUW, American Association of University Women. Fantastic organization. This is going to be the Novi Northville chapter. I'm going to ask Jane and Karen to open up your videos and audios so we can chat a little bit. We have Jane Hecker, who's the president of the chapter, and Karen Zazinski. Welcome to both of you ladies.
Thank you.
You all play a role individually, and Karen, Kathy, you can stay on if you want.
Oh,
You
okay.
want to stay on? We can all
I
chat
think you
together.
want to see my face.
Oh.
wasn't
I
sure.
can see your face the whole time. We can all chat together.
Sure.
But yes, I welcome the both of you ladies. You're both play a major role in history individually and collectively as an organization. So I want to talk to you both about what the organization represents, its mission, its goal, and things that impact women in the past and today. Welcome to you both. Let's start with you, Jane, and talk a little bit about AAUW, please.
Sure. Before I do that, I just want to thank Kathy. It was fun, great fun to listen to your interview and comments. And actually, my husband is in the room with me, and he was telling me how interesting it was to listen to you. So
Oh,
yeah,
For sure.
a vote from the other side as well. But
Stay with us, Kathy. You can still talk with us.
okay. Well, thank you.
Sure. It's nice to meet you and hear more about you. I just want to talk with you a little bit about AAUW, and we are our chapter or a branch is part of a national organization that was formed in 1881. So it's been a number of years that we have been impacting our mission of opportunity and equity for women and girls, beginning at actually a very young age. So our branch this year is celebrating our 45th year. So we are having a really wonderful year, even though we're virtual every month when we meet, to bring our program forward and celebrate our 45th year. And Kathy, like you were talking, a lot of things were different back in 1975 when all of this started. And those girls talk about running around in their pantsuits and their polyester pantsuits.
Yes.
Polyester.
Yes.
Really fashionable.
I had a pink one.
Yeah.
Bright pink, yeah.
And at that time, getting, there were a lot of opportunities and interest in getting together and having discussions and discussing problems and trying to think outside ourselves, our lives, and all of that. So that's kind of what motivated them to here anyway, to get going. As it turns out, we have continued that thrust all the way through until now. And we are, we have a lot of philanthropic efforts that we try to do in the community. Of course, this year, it's not been very easy to do. In fact, not existent, because a number of our efforts are directed to children in school. One being our program for 8th grade girls, Career Path Day, where we visit a local community college or university and help them have a look at different careers for women, some of them non-traditional, and then come back to the community and visit some of the businesses in our community. It's typically in Northville because we need to be able to walk around, and give them a chance to see that you can be an entrepreneur, you can be a design architect. It's a very exciting day for the girls. We also have another program where we read to the students in school and bring forward more about women in history.
Mhm.
So Karen, in a little bit, will show you some of the books that she brought that are possible choices for us. But again, not able to do that this year. but you know, there's a lot to share with the world about women from history. And we are happy to do that and, you know, have it be a part of what we do. I don't know, Karen, do you want to do a little bit of that?
Sure, Karen, let's hear from you.
And I'll share with you a little bit about women inventors from
Oh,
history.
yeah,
I
I'm looking forward
researched
to it. Huh.
myself. But I want you to know that along with this reading in school program that we do, we also, from our budget and a memorial fundraising that we do within our organization, to raise money, and we donate, make a donation to every K4 or K5 elementary school in Novi or Northville every year. And it's to purchase more materials about women in history. So Karen's going to share a little bit about that with you.
Okay, sure, Karen, hi.
Sure. Well, I just collected some of the books that I normally take when I go into a classroom, and just to share, and some of them you have on your library shelves there, but I have one here that's called Girls Think of Everything. And actually a woman came up with the idea of a paper grocery bag with a flat bottom that stands up by itself. A woman came up with the idea for windshield wipers for cars. I mean, there are all kinds of amazing things in there that we share with kids.
So women discovered the windshield wiper. Is that right?
I don't remember.
Yes, had a role in it? Yeah.
Yeah, her name was Mary Anderson.
Okay.
And she came up with the idea, but she, you know, the top-notch engineer sort of poo-pooed her idea.
Mhm.
And then somebody else was able to sell them on the idea later on using her concept. So
1903. And they originally started coming down from the top.
Mhm.
right,
And she was on a bus in New York, or I think.
yeah,
And she was riding along, and if it was raining, they had to open the windows so they could see.
Hmm.
So she thought it was a good idea to come up with that.
And it was, huh?
it was a great idea.
Yeah.
Again, this book, I just, you know, I love to visit small independent bookstores. And I walked into this bookstore one day, and this book was sitting there, Little Leaders, Bold Women in Black History. And each page talks about a woman in Black history who, you know, did something significant. And one of the books that I use a lot is called Remember the Ladies. And it talks about 100 great American women in history. And I had some students at an elementary school, fifth graders, who said to me, well, have you ever met any famous women? And so I decided after that I would carry in my bag. I had a photograph of myself with Governor Granholm, and I had a photograph of myself with our current governor, and so on. You know, so I had a few. And so now I carry them with me, because when somebody asks that question now, and I can say, oh, yeah, you know, actually I have, and I pull out one of my, and they love that. The kids love that. So, and there are tons of books about women in history. These are just some, you know, that I have collected over the years. And so I just wanted to share a few of them with you. There's so many more. And I know the Novi Library has many, because I've checked them out before.
I was just going to say that. You can stop by the Novi Public Library. We have tons of them, and they're probably on display during this month. If not, you can ask the librarian. They'll pull out many of them for you to look at. So that'll be great. I know also the organization has supported a group or someone who's made it in Our Detroit magazine. Who am I talking about? What am I talking about there?
Oh, I'll jump to that here in just a second. They I want to just touch on a few more other women in history who
Mhm.
invented something, and then I'll jump to that.
For sure.
All you have to do is Google women in history, and out comes
Everything.
interesting list. So
Mhm.
for your listeners, it's a woman who invented chocolate chip cookies, of course.
What?
And all she had to do was take a piece of chocolate and break it into pieces when she was trying to make chocolate cookies, and out comes chocolate chip cookies. Another more,
That's very important there.
get down to things that you
Yes.
use every day, and disposable diapers, something that made a difference in our life.
Mhm.
The interesting thing to me as I looked at all of this was how long ago this happened. I mean, a lot of this wasn't recent. Josephine Cochran, her patent was granted in 1886 for a dishwasher. And she's a socialite, and she wanted to protect her china, and so she came up with this contraption. And believe me, when you look at the picture, it's a real contraption of something that pressure washed her fine china. 1886.
Mhm.
The first Black female to get a doctorate from MIT, Shirley Jackson, developed subatomic compounds enabling fax machines, solar cells,
Yep.
touch tone phone, and call waiting. That,
Mhm.
quite a long time ago. We talked about Marion, and another woman invented Scotch Guard. Another one invented disposable diapers. And the last one I think I'll mention is Stephanie Kowalek in 1966, who came up with the compound for bulletproof vests, which
Oh, okay.
are truly a lifesaver now.
And it's good you're mentioning these things, Jane, because I think even though we're talking about history and what these things that happened so long ago, I think it's something that empowers the young people of today to let them know,
Yeah.
wow, women were playing these roles. They weren't just
Yeah. And
home,
anytime you talk to someone
sure.
I have a very good friend who has very, very serious cancer issues. And when something doesn't work and something pops up someplace else, out comes some other type of chemotherapy that can help her. They're always out there working, looking for something new to help us. I think it's incredible in the medical
Absolutely.
field alone.
Mhm.
So anyway, back to some of the other things that I want to share with you. One is, as you said, we have had done a home tour as our main fundraiser. Of course, you can't do any of these things unless you raise money. So we work very hard to raise enough money to do our philanthropic projects, set those programs in place, do scholarships for girls in high school, both school districts. We support scholarships or funding into a schoolcraft college, and another terrific experience for college women leaders that's done annually at the end of May. This year will be virtual. Usually it's at the University of Maryland. A great leadership opportunity for girls at the college level. Anyway, we moved in 2019, Karen, right? 2019?
Yes, that was
Our first fashion show. Our Michigan designer fashion show luncheon that we held at Schoolcraft. And at that event, we invited women designers who wanted to show it was a runway show, who wanted to show their outfits and work. And one of them that day was a woman named Veronica Scott, who represented her entrepreneurial business in Detroit. And she developed as a project at CCI for a coat that you could make into a sleeping bag for homeless women. And she ended up making it, coming up with a way to have it, the business funded, and the people who sew for her are women from the streets. And that is, she was featured in Midwest Living magazine just this past spring, early this spring. And her, she came, her representatives came, showed the coat, had a wonderful video. She was able to, people were just fascinated with the whole idea. And that whole project has brought her to a national level, which is really exciting for a local Detroit woman. And it goes on today to be something really special. I'm hunting real quickly, so I know.
For your organization to provide that platform for her was really great, and giving
Yeah, well,
opportunities.
I mean, to us, it's incredibly special that not only did we have her as part of our fashion show, but she also has been nationally recognized. I think that's really remarkable. There's another woman who was part of that show, and she is featured in our magazine, HOUR, the one from January, and Nabila Najar, and she has a whole page. I can show you a little bit about her.
Hold it up a little higher.
Page. Yeah, she makes these interesting outfits from very tulle and georgette, and these interesting fabrics. So she's somebody else that we brought out to the world, or out in Novi in Northville. At school, at college, yeah. And anyway, so we are continuing to move that effort forward. We are not able to do it this year. It would have been in April, but we're not able to do it this year. We're hoping for next year. But, there's a lot of interest. We had a great day that day, and raised, a wonderful amount of money. We had, in addition to that, some fashion accessory designers. The thing that's nice about it is that we brought these people out into another environment to be able to share it with other people. I mean, what woman doesn't like to go look at a fashion show and go walk around and look at these interesting designer accessories and buy things,
absolutely,
and scarves, and so anyway, they were all ready to come back again this year, and I think that's a terrific thing. We started off just thinking we would have a show with Chico's or Macy's or whomever, and one of the members came up with the idea of, let's expose some of these women designers. That's what we're about, is empowering people, women, and bringing them forward. And by gosh, we did it.
Very good. Yes. You still have so many supportive women in your organization. I'm in the organization, so I've attended some of the meetings, and even though they're virtual, the support is still there, and women are still strong with all of their efforts, which is great. And it's going to continue just a little bit longer. We're going to get through it, aren't we? Karen, I think it's you're going to talk about an event coming up. You have
yes. I want to talk. Karen's going to talk a little bit about some of our efforts that are part of a national effort, and that being, of course, Equal Pay Day, which is coming up later this month. Karen,
isn't that something we still have to fight for? Equal pay. What do we do?
I know it's like
we're getting closer, but are we satisfied with that? No, we're not. But you're working on it. What's the event, Karen?
So anyway, we are hosting an event on March 24th. It's an Equal Pay Day event, And so maybe I should tell a little bit about what Equal Pay Day is, because
Sure.
many people will not know that. This year, March 24th, is the symbolic day when women's earnings catch up with men's earnings from the previous year.
Hmm.
And for Black and brown women, it's much later in the year. For Native American women and Latino women, it's also much later in the year. But this is a symbolic day for all women, and women working full-time in the United States generally are paid 82% or 82 cents on the dollar for what men are making. And here in Michigan, it's actually only 78 cents on the dollar. And the national organization, the American Association of University Women, has researched this and continues to update their research. And if you go on the website of AAUW.org, you will find lots of information, lots of research information on the issue. And the pay gap starts the minute a woman leaves college. And it continues throughout her lifetime. And that's a huge issue, because when you earn less, you save less. So women generally have fewer savings than men, because they're earning less than men, and it's about half as much in terms of what they might have in their bank account at any given time. And so they have less funds available for an emergency, what we call a rainy day fund. So, and then the pay gap follows them into retirement. When you earn less, you have fewer dollars coming back to you in any kind of pension fund. Your Social Security pays out less because you've earned less over the years, and so on. So it follows women throughout their lifetime. And so what we really need to happen is we need state and federal laws that promote and ensure equal pay for women and girls. And we need employers to be conscious of this. One of our members a number of years ago worked for as a sales rep. I think it was for an insurance company, but anyway, regardless, she was the top sales rep in the company, and they hired a young man fresh out of college, 24 years old. And after about 6 months, she learned that they were paying him more than they were paying her, their top sales rep. So she took the issue to the leadership in the company, and to their credit, they brought in an outside auditor, and they went through their books, and they rectified the situation. And that's what we need companies to do. But anyway, and then women need to, feel that they need to advocate for themselves. So those are kind of 3 things that we think all women need to be aware of. And on March 24th, which this year is the general overall equal pay day, we are hosting a forum, including the state representatives from both Northville and Novi, the Northville state senator, and the Novi state senator never responded, and then our US Congresswoman from the area, and to talk about what's happening. And we also have, I'm forgetting, our Novi County Commissioner. And what we're asking them to talk about briefly is what's happening at their level of government to promote issues that are important to women and girls. Things like not only pay equity, but things like affordable childcare. And there's a multitude of issues. So it's on March 24th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And you have to register for the meeting because we're limited in the number of people we can accommodate. So if you go to AAUW NN for Northville Novi You can sign up there.
AAUWNN
Mhm,
at
.org.
dot. Okay,
Mhm.
.org. Got it. All
Right.
right, that sounds great.
And
Continue, huh?
I can put that in the
Sure, you
chat.
can type. I was going to say, if you can type that in the chat for anyone who wants it, that
I
would be
Oh,
fantastic.
that'd be good. That'd be good. There,
Yes.
And I know I learned a couple things about the whole issue of equal pay as I was doing a little research on this. And just interesting thing was in 1942, during the middle of the Second World War, the War Labor Board declared September 26, 1942, equal pay for equal work day.
Mm.
And then in 1963, President Kennedy signed an Equal Pay Act, which I, of course, didn't know that until I looked into it.
And
And
how equal was it then? What was the difference
Right.
back then? You know,
Yeah, I know, exactly,
are we
exactly.
growing at an alarming rate? Does anyone know, or is it just creeping up penny by penny?
Yeah, right. Well, we figure by the year 2093, women at the current rate will catch up to men in terms of their pay. And there's one other person that I want to recognize because she has been instrumental in and a fierce champion of equal pay, and that is a woman named Lilly Ledbetter, who was the first woman hired as a manager for the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company in 1979. And she worked there for 19 years. And one day somebody left a note for her telling her that she was earning 40% less than her male counterparts in that company. And she went to battle for this. And the case was settled in her favor, but of course the Goodyear Tire Company wasn't going to accept that. So they took it to the US Supreme Court, where she lost 5-4. But one of the people writing an opinion was Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and saying that Congress ought to rectify this. And actually, Congress did do that. And when on the first day, I think it was that Barack Obama became president, he signed into law the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. And she's still alive today. She's in her 80s. And she goes out and does speaking engagements on this very issue about equal pay. Very interesting lady.
It's great that so many women are now representing, Democrat, Republican. It doesn't matter when it comes to the women part of it,
Right.
whether you're directly advocating for a women's issue, but just to see the face of women. Kathy, you've been in, I think you and Karen have both met up at some point during politics, and just to see.
Yeah, she and I campaigned actually for the same office one year, and I was saying to Karen that she is one of the few people out of all the years that I ran for public office after I retired from the city of Novi, because I ran for city council and I ran for county commission and then ran for state rep, and that was every 2 years you have to be reelected and you have to run again. County commission is 2 years, and so is state representative. And so there's always somebody running against you. But Karen here, my friend, was the only person that actually, even though she did not win, she called me and congratulated me. And she's the only person out of all the years I've run for office that actually ever did that. So that's really
great. Yeah, because you're a champion just to run and put forth an effort. And I said before, just to see women who are passionate about achievement and success and rising to the top, and then bringing people with you as you rise to the top is so important in and of itself. The win is also great, but to me, you win when you just step out, because you're paving the way. That's what this month is all about. African American women, non-African American women, it doesn't matter. We all have had our struggles, and we've all had our challenges, and we're all moving forward as women. We've come a long way. I think it never stops. I think it's the determination, education, and action that it's all increased due to what has happened in history. So applause to all women who are making efforts to
We
make
still
things
haven't
better.
come far enough where, now we're still hearing from people, well, she was the first one to do this, when we quit hearing we're the first ones to do something, I guess we will have finally arrived, right?
Mhm,
We
mhm.
would have finally made it.
Kathy is a great role model for young women today because
For sure.
Kathy, in addition to working in a job for a good part of her life, she has served the community for years and years and years. And she's a great role. You're a great role model, Kathy, for
Look at that.
all women.
I try to be. But
Kathy, I just want to tell you, Kathy, I got your name now in my head. So we sit down and start
oh,
talking
I'm
about people
good
come
at
and visit us or become a part of us. I know where
I will tell you.
I bet I
I'll
can find
tell
you.
you one other Karen Szynski thing. When she and I were campaigning, and she was just so, we were never mean to each other when we were campaigning. She was doing her thing, trying to run, and I was doing my thing, both running for the same office. We never really, we both, if we had a campaign night, we would say our little speeches. We were never mean to each other like it happens today. But I was on the day of the vote, and everybody, so many more people were voting in person. As I was entering my precinct, and I had campaign workers at every precinct, I looked up in the sky, and here, flying above my head, was elect Karen Szynski
I
on
bet.
an airplane. And I thought, oh my gosh, there is no way I'm
Watch
winning.
out.
I possibly win because I don't have an airplane. I cannot compete with that, So I
That's
said
funny.
to her, I will never forgive you for having an airplane. That really blew my mind.
Well, Kathy, it's a good, in the long run, it's a good thing. We got more of her. So she's a real star
Oh, I know.
in anything she does, and a wonderful person to have as part of our organization and part of the world. So
Well, we need more people to run for office that are like Karen, that are not knocking the other person. They're running for themselves. I mean, I always believed in that. I'm not running against someone as much as I'm running for myself.
sure.
And that's the way she thought too. She was
And
running
running for the people, you're
Yeah,
representing the people is what
Yeah.
it's all about, for
Yeah.
sure. Ladies, I've enjoyed listening to you. I want to find out how we're going to wrap it up pretty soon. I want to find out how you're managing during this pandemic. And, we're not as much locked down as we have been. We're getting free a little bit, but how's it been going? Each one of you, how's it going, Jane? What have you been
Oh, you mean personally?
personally? Mhm.
Oh, sure. Well, it's okay. It's it's different. I miss some things. I miss being around my mahjong players. I
Mm.
play mahjong. I'm a retired school principal, so
Oh, nice.
I think a lot about what's happening in schools, and I'm happy to see that they're back in the classroom. I think that's an important thing. And just trying to stay connected with my family and everybody I know and love, and to just keep moving forward. We're gonna
Absolutely.
do the best we can to do the best we can.
Mm-hmm. Karen, what about you? How's it going?
Well, it's going. Now that I got my first shot on yesterday
Yeah.
morning,
A little
I'm
better.
feeling better about it.
Uh-huh.
And I last spring, I said to my husband, we need a project. So every day we would go down in our basement, and we could only stand to work for an hour, but we'd work for an hour, and we took the weekends off, but all week, every day for an hour. And of course, I have a big dog that needs a walk every day, so it gets me out of the house. And I think getting outside and gets a fresh air, I think revives you. And so, I mean, and of course I still have a big dog, so I do that. And so, we're doing okay, and it looks like the end might be in sight, which is a good thing. It's something to look forward to. And of course, we've been doing this chair yoga every Monday morning
Wow.
from 10
Yeah.
to 10:45, and I love it. And I feel like I'm getting my week off to a good start. And
Mhm.
we've tried to support local restaurants by doing
Good.
carry out at least once a week from a local restaurant, particularly the independent ones.
So important, yes.
Yeah, it's so important because I want them to be there when this is all over.
Indeed. What about you, Kathy?
Well, actually, I was still going to Lansing
I
for
know.
the days. So, I never felt, I never felt completely isolated. And having been, as I said before, the former director of the Novi Senior Center, a lot of people know that I've been very actively involved in senior services and programs. So a lot of the senior centers in the area asked me to come and talk to the families. And I just felt so terrible because if seniors were in an assisted living or they were in a nursing home, and some of the things that were happening were terrible because those places didn't have PPE, and the seniors basically that were living in these small apartments paying a lot of money for extra services and programs, we're not getting any of those services and programs. And even in one of the big high-end facilities, even removed, in the fall, they even removed the picnic tables and the lawn chairs because none of them wanted to be the first facility in the area to get a case in their facility. So everybody was going overboard. So I was hearing from so many people who really were trapped in their apartments. They couldn't leave. They would have a paper lunch delivered and maybe a paper dinner. They wouldn't even, one man even said that he wasn't allowed to leave. I mean, he was paying $2,400 a month, and he wasn't allowed to leave there. If he left there, he couldn't come back, even to go grocery shopping. So all of these places made rules that were very detrimental to older adults. And it hurt me because I knew so many people that were in a lot of these apartments. And so I spent a lot of time trying to help these facilities and working with the health department and trying to get them to, if everybody's isolated together, and they've been isolated together for a month or two, they should be able to go into the dining room, if they're spaced far enough apart. But these places wouldn't even do that. So many of them just have locked everybody up for a year, and they're not going to be the same people when they come out. I can tell you, the cognitive decline for older adults is huge. Isolation is the worst thing for people 65 and over. Is absolutely the worst thing. And I found out in my own personal experience, my kids became my parents. They wouldn't allow us to go grocery shop. No, you've got to stay in, and wiping down lettuce and wiping down, everything, which made me
talking
laugh.
about me.
But I'm telling you,
Did you hear?
that's what they did. And we got over that real quick, though. We got over that, and we never stopped seeing our families. So, the kids, the grandkids were over and everything. So I was never worried about it, and we weren't. I'm not going to live my life that way. I've had both of my shots, so now it's even worse, right? So good for me. So we've been out to eat with friends and everything. So it's it hasn't been bad for me like it has been a lot of people, because some people, I've heard of people that have had strokes and have had mental health issues and all these things because of isolation. I think one thing that we have discovered in all this is that people need people. They need to be with people and around people, and they need to socialize. It's become, kids and adults, seniors, whatever your age, we are natural born socializers. We need it. Absolutely. So anyway.
Sure. Getting closer and closer too. I'm sorry, Jane.
Just older, that's not just we older folks, like my teenage grandchildren are still virtual at home in Ann Arbor. And we just, once a week, we go over there. Now we can go out, but we would go over and have a driveway meeting and bring them lunch. I mean, it's the same, they miss their peers as much as we do, you
Right.
know?
Yep.
Yep.
And I think you're very right, Kathy, about people needing people. I totally agree with that.
For
Yep.
sure, absolutely. And things are
for
looking a
asking.
little bit better day by day. We're keeping hopeful to all of that. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Jane and Karen from the AAUW and Kathy Crawford from everywhere and across Michigan. I thank you for your conversation, your time on this Women's History Month, playing a part of this for the Novi Public Library. So I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Wish you much
bring up
success.
just one more commercial, AAUWMN.org. If
Got
you're
it.
interested in our organization, or if you are interested in tuning in for our Equal Pay Day Forum on March 24th, we'll get you the link to, you get you registered, and the link to listen to Haley Stevens, Dana Polanski, Kelly Green, Matt Polazar, and Glenn Markham. So
For sure.
thank you so much for the
Thank
opportunity.
you very much. All right.
Yeah.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Thanks, Karen.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to see all of you.